It's not a mistake that I'm here. This is like what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and I feel very confident about that.
Chances are you've already come across Olivia Bee's work, from client work with Converse and Adidas to intimate portraits with Kesha and Kim Gordon. Olivia developed her dreamy signature style long before the peak days of Tumblr. Soft, grainy, candid, and colorful, the subjects of Olivia's work exist in the in-betweens of childhood and adulthood. We sat down with Olivia and chatted about shooting for Converse at 15, not going to college, and how it's important to share the vulnerability in your work with the world.
Whenever you guys are ready, you can get right into the questions.
Great. Okay, cool.
Hi.
So something I feel like people my age, we were talking about this a little earlier before we started filming, about how the difference between early 20s and maybe late 20s or beyond is everyone my age, I think, is oh, thank God we didn't have Instagram when I was in high school or when I was just starting. But for you and your peers, I guess, you all did. So how do you feel about your earliest work being so available to whoever wants to see it and so publicly available online?
Embarrassed. But I also think putting things online was always part of my artistic process, not necessarily looking for validation from outside sources, but by having it have a life of its own, and just me letting it go was always part of how I understood what things meant. So I guess I haven't really known it any other way. So
right.
It's just part of it's an easier way to let go.
So you guys started on Flickr, and what to you are the differences between how Flickr was when you were starting and something like Instagram now, which is where a lot of photographers get their start?
Well, Flickr was very oriented just for photographers.
Right.
Instagram, I feel it's everyone is being a photographer, or trying, or succeeding, or somewhere in between. So I feel Flickr was just more niche. It was for people who are interested in photography.
How do you feel about having the prefix young always applied to you and your work?
I feel it's becoming less of a novelty now. I was really frustrated in early days because everyone was writing about me, but not enough people were hiring me. And I was guys, you're talking about this young photographer doing all these things, but you're just writing about it. You're not giving me a job, so how am I supposed to do more things? And that was really frustrating. And then I started getting a lot of work and not being written up at all, and that was better, I think. But now it's cool. It's kind of a middle. I don't know. I guess when young people do well, old people don't want to believe it, or want to believe it's a mistake, or I got here by some magic. But I work really, really, really hard, and I always have worked really hard. I'm everything is pretty strategic. I do what I feel, but it's also a strategy.
Right.
It's not a mistake in any way. So I don't know. I guess as I get older, it's less of me being a young creative, and young is not always my prefix anymore, but sometimes it is. I don't know. It's okay.
And when did you realize that your passion or the thing you were interested in, you started when you were 11, so it was just something you were doing because you loved it. When did you realize, oh, this is my job, or this is going to be my business? You talked about strategy. When did strategy enter into it for you?
So when I was 15, I got a message from Converse on Flickr. And I ignored it because I thought it was fake. And then they messaged me again, and I thought the second one was fake. And then they messaged me again, and I thought the third one was fake. And I feel it was finally when I got another message, and they were we're trying to contact you. Can you please respond? We really want to do a shoot with you. And I was oh, I guess. Oh, Converse, yeah, the shoes I wear every day, okay. And I brought it to my parents, and they're you haven't responded to this? And I was no, I just thought it was fake. And they're well, it's up to you what you want to do with this, but maybe you could make some money. And I was oh, maybe this could be my job. And so they were always very encouraging about whatever I wanted to make or do.
And now that you've moved into, I guess you still take all kinds of photos, for yourself, but now that a lot of your work is shooting, big celebrities and stuff, I'm just wondering how you approach shooting Katy Perry or Kesha compared to shooting like a boyfriend or a friend? What the differences are there?
I mean, I think it's the same train of thought. It's being collaborative and trying to find a moment together, and me seeing a moment where they are very human and very themselves. I feel like I give people the opportunity to really be themselves in front of my camera. And of course it is different when there's like a whole production and like there's a lot of pressure on this thing, or like this image is going to go on a billboard, but it still comes down to the same way of photographing and building something together.
I like asking creative people this question. If you were going to do another job that's totally different from directing and photography, like what would it be and why?
I've been asked this question before, and I just like, I would still be here. Like, I really don't, it's not a mistake that I'm here. This is like what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and I feel very confident about that.
And you started working professionally, you were saying, because you were considering going to school and then didn't get into a school that you were interested in?
Well, I started working professionally when I was 15, when I was still in high school. But, and so it became my full-time job while I was going to school full-time. I mean, I definitely had stretches where I didn't work, but it was still like, I was getting commissioned quite a bit, and skipping school. And then I applied for Cooper Union, but I wasn't accepted when I was like, I guess, I would have been 18. And my parents were kind of pissed. That was like the one moment where they were like, what are you doing? Like every other moment, it was like fine that I was doing what I was doing.
Right.
And they were kind of freaked out because I hadn't applied to other schools. And I said that I did, and I didn't. But I just took it as a sign, like, no, you're not supposed to like go to school right now. Like maybe I'll go to school later. I don't know.
They probably calmed down about it by now.
They're fine. But in the moment, I think it was because a lot of their friends, they all had kids my age, and they were like going to school and like had very like concrete college plans, and I didn't. And I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna like move to New York or something. And then I moved to Baltimore, and then I moved to New York. But I don't know. They were chill. It's fine.
Do you ever feel like you missed out on like a collegiate experience? Like, is formal education something you'd be into later? Or do you think like, I just had a different path and I don't really need it?
I feel like I felt that a lot, like that when my friends were in their second year of college.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm missing out a little bit. But it wasn't like I felt like I was missing out on the academic aspect. It was more like, they're meeting their friends for life. And then I was like, wait, I'm just meeting my friends, but I don't go to school, and it's fine.
Right.
But, I really like teaching. I've taught a few workshops and really enjoy teaching high school students. So I've thought about, like, maybe that's my way of going back to school at some point. But I'm not sure. I've also thought about, like, maybe you'll want to go to school for writing someday, or, like, maybe you'll want to go to school for, like, some sort of science thing. I don't know. I'm, like, definitely open. No doors are closed, but it's not my priority right now.
So I think people think of your photos as being kind of diaristic and very, like, vulnerable and raw, but there must be some of your work or aspects of yourself that you don't, show in your photos. How do you decide what to keep to yourself and what you want to share?
I'm very lucky to have a lot of people in my life who are very accepting of the fact that I'm going to take your picture. And definitely, like, I ask the first time before I take someone in my life. I also think, like, if you date me, like, no shit, there's going to be photos of you on the internet. Like, you knew who I was before you dated me. Like, why should it be different? I don't know.
Yeah.
But Lord's song, Rider in the Dark, is a lot about that. We talked about that a lot. Like, what is the lyric? Bet you rue the day you kissed a rider in the dark. And it's like, well, you knew who I was. But are there photos that I keep private? Definitely. And I think that some photos, like, don't belong on Instagram, but maybe they belong on my website, where it's like people aren't commenting and aren't sending to their friends necessarily, but it's more of like a gallery space online, which is kind of how I feel about books that I make or gallery shows. It's just like, those moments are more curated. It's less of like a social media moment.
Right.
But I've been working, the book is done actually. I have a book that I probably won't be published for a while. It'll be my third book, but it's very, very, very personal and has like a lot of writing in it, and like definitely people's names are in it, and like lots of different photos of boys that I like hooked up with or dated, or pictures of me in like very vulnerable situations, like crying naked on other people's chests and like stuff like that. But it's just like, it's not ready to be in the world yet. I have to move past it a little bit more in my personal life before it can come out. But I mean, I guess there are some, but if a photo is like so good and compelling, but it's also like super vulnerable and super personal, like that's why I would put it in the world. I'm not saying that like all like photos aren't off limits, but like if something is so compelling, but it's so fucked up and is going to make you sad, then there's a reason that like it should exist in the world so that other people are able to see their experiences through this picture.
Right.
But there are definitely like I don't know, early party days I don't want on the internet, or like some like sexual photos I'm like, that doesn't really belong anywhere. It's not even that good. I don't know. But it has to be like bad too to not be shared.
So do you just like when you're hanging out with your friends just always have a camera in your hand kind of thing?
Not as much in the last like few years, but still, yeah. And like people close to me are used to having their photo taken.
And it doesn't take you out of the moment at all when you're hanging out with someone, if you're constantly sort of in your mind framing them or thinking of what the image would look like?
It's just the way I think, and just the way I kind of see it. I mean, I get asked that question a lot, but I think it's also like, this is my experience. Like, I don't necessarily think it's taking away from the experience because it's my experience of it. And honestly, pictures help me be more present. Like, I think there is this thing of like looking back upon it and like being stuck in the past and like perpetuating moments to be there forever. But also I think it's like a way of saying like, I really appreciate this moment, or like, I love this moment. I'm going to be present in it. I'm going to take it in, and then it's going to be gone, but I'll have this souvenir later. To like make sense of my life or something. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that seems like a great place to end our interview.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you too.